Hi, welcome to the Cows Podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Burney. A catalyst is defined as a person or thing that precipitates an event. A catalyst is something that it participates in a reaction but does not get consumed in the reaction. There's a heart behind this podcast for, people with aspirations. There's a heart behind this podcast for motivated people that want to make a difference, that have a bias for action, that really truly want to be a catalyst in the environment around them, both professionally and personally, in their homes, in their workplace, and beyond. So welcome to this podcast. I really hope you're enjoying the series that we're in. Welcome to this episode, and let's dive right in. So can you just share maybe top 1 to 3 things that seem to be kind of common threads, summarizing? Maybe it's something we've already touched on here in the last few minutes, but in general, when you think about mentoring this group and the content of the podcast, which, by the way, what's the name of the podcast?
It's called the West Connect podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that on all?
If you look at my LinkedIn profile, it's on there.
Okay, perfect. But are there maybe just a few primary or foundational things that kind of seem to run true throughout that?
Yeah. It's incredible, actually, that there's like 3 or 4 or 5 things that almost every conversation has the same component on.
Okay.
There's usually a component of risk taking where, I got invited to be on this panel and I didn't want to do it, but I went ahead and did it. And that's where I met Bob. And Bob ended up being my boss. There's always an imposter syndrome issue where somebody gets a position or they get a promotion or they're offered an opportunity and they think, holy, like, no way. I'm just Brian. I don't know anything. And you've got to shed that initial fear and realize that everybody wakes up in the morning feeling that way. And that's just part of being a professional, and you've got to kind of push through that. And then there's always a sense of serendipity of, I ended up getting a job at Goldman because, a friend of mine on the lacrosse team's brother happened to work there. And, we went out for drinks one night and I met him. And then next thing you know, a year later, they had a position being opened. That's one. And then being thoughtfully persistent, I think, is huge. And realizing that just because somebody doesn't respond to you, just because somebody says, hey, sorry, I'm really busy right now, can you follow with me in 6 months? It's not a no. It's not a no. And unless you follow up, which is your job, it's not theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ever know where that conversation might lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of the kind of the big themes that I see over and over again. And the really cool ones, they're rare, but they do happen. It's sometimes you get somebody that has matched their personal passion with their business acumen, and they've got this purpose-driven professional life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just pure sublime state of being.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you can really aspire to, because once you see it, it's really remarkable. It's rare, but I think it's something we should all try to drive at, because once you talk to those people, you can feel it.
Yeah, that's cool. Very encouraging. Just one last maybe pivot here off of this is, what would you say to maybe yourself 10, 15 years ago, earlier in your career, where, you doesn't necessarily have to, be within the confines of a specific job or anything like that, but just what would you like to heard, 10 or 15 years ago, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, probably longer than you have time for. One of the big ones would be patience. To be patient. Very difficult still for me, but I've learned. And then another one that I've been actually talking about with entrepreneurs recently is, and I'm certainly guilty of it. We all want kind of a turnkey solution. Like, I just wish I could plug into this investor network, or if I had this deal come through, or if I could get this channel, it would be kind of the holy grail, and it would change everything. and especially about capital raising. That's a big one for me that I talk to a lot of folks about. And I think now with the benefit of hindsight, there's a reason it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like the journey and the path of getting told no 1,000 times,
Mm-hmm.
of pitching 1,000 times, of telling your story 1,000 times, of begging for the introduction and getting the meeting and doing well, or getting the meeting and failing. That is the way the business is supposed to be made. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to embrace that journey, because if there is a turnkey solution, there's something wrong with it. It's a poisoned apple, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to go on that kind of pathway of difficulty and challenging, because it will make you a better manager, and it will sharpen your skill set to go out and raise capital in the future. But there are no easy answers, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the reality, right? And I think there's a great book. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but The Obstacle is the Way is something that I read last year that really helped me kind of embrace that thought process of sowing seeds, of being patient, because I'm super impatient myself, and that's something that I've really been intentional about. Putting things in my routine, or putting people around me to keep myself accountable to that, because a lot of times things that are worth, and this was kind of the theme of one of my earlier series, was things that are worth building, things that are going to be sustainable and be rewarding long term, are generally going to take some time to build. And that's just a core principle. You can apply that broadly, but yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's very relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for Excelsior, which actually I don't even think we've mentioned the name yet, but for your team looking forward, what are you most excited about?
It's a good question. So obviously COVID has changed all of our lives and professional careers. I think what I'm most excited about is really embracing this inbound marketing concept, embracing this content creation, and leveraging all of the thought pieces we put out, the webinars, the blog pieces, social media platforms, podcasts like yours. I'm excited about leveraging those further, taking it to the next level, but not having to sacrifice so much of my physical and mental and emotional bandwidth with traveling, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do 100, 150 flights a year, and it just was kind of part of the business. And I had an investor actually email me last week, because I launched my own podcast, and we went back and forth on kind of a discourse, and he was like, "Hey, this is great, but are you like paying attention to the investments themselves?" It's a fair question. And I said, actually, I'll be honest with you, I've got more time in my hands now than I ever have, because I'm not on a plane 6 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited to see where I can take that newfound time and, continue to be a resource for my investors without, having to get on a plane. So that's one thing that I'm pretty excited about for this coming year. It's just been cool, to our conversation about lessons learned, talking to my college mentees. 12 months ago, it would have been unimaginable to me that I'd be a guest on a podcast. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't know how to reach out to you. I don't know what I would talk about. But now it's become awesome. Like, it's a great way to meet people. I get to make connections with you. Your listeners hopefully learn something. They reach out to me. It's just a really nice way to do business. And so I'm excited about, continuing to do that moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of things that like this and like time savings that will hopefully people see that aspect of it and don't focus on, the negatives and can really capitalize on that. I think that's important. I know for me, I just real quick, I want to kind of wrap this up, but I want to share that I have been driving a minimum of 45 minutes up to almost hour 20, hour 30 on some days each way for the last 11 years. And I was let go last year unexpectedly from my job, and we won't get into that, but I found a job working from home this year after starting the podcast and being able to work from home. And now I'm actually taking a new role where I can work from home and manage a remote team. And it's just, I'm super excited. I got into podcast in 2013 when I was, spending a lot of time on the road. And so there's a lot of the podcasts I've listened to that I have a lot of appreciation for and have drawn some, my style and some things off of. But being able to get the time back with my family and not have to travel has been transformational for me. So I can attest to that as well.
Yeah. I mean, people ask about morning routine, like that's a kind of typical question sometime on a show, or a practice that you've taken on with COVID that you think you're going to stay with. And the biggest one for me is sleep. I used to get up there's a flight out of Nashville that gets to Atlanta on Delta. It's a 5:25 departure. Mm. So you'd get up at like 2:45 or 3:00. And, you can gut your way through that. Certainly. I mean, I would fly with guys that would do that multiple times a week for their whole careers. But at some level, it just takes your spirit of life out of you, and you're leaving a lot on the table, I think. And I don't think it makes you a better manager to say that, I'm sacrificing time with my family or rest time. And I've started being, even pre-COVID, very clear with my investors that, I'll work hard for you. I'll do everything I can. You can always get in touch with me during the week, but the weekends are my time. Like I just need that. And I think to your point, that kind of commute just grinds you down.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Something's got to give in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I appreciate having you on here and let me kind of drill you with a few questions about, the theme of Against All Odds. It's been great to connect with you. Definitely look forward to staying in touch. Hopefully once things, maybe we can cross paths here locally and have coffee sometime soon or something like that.
Yeah, man. I'd like that.
And appreciate it. Merry Christmas. And I'll be in touch.
All right, man. The journey is the destination.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
See you, man.
See you. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Definitely subscribe, check out Be a Catalyst on Instagram and on Twitter. Also, don't forget to check out the YouTube channel where you'll find videos in addition to the Catalyst podcast recordings that give a little bit more context around my heart for training, my heart for seeing early to middle managers and first-time leaders really thrive and be a catalyst in the organization that they're in the project that they are after, everything that goes along with that. So thank you for being a part of this. Tune in for the next episode, and remember, be you, be confident, be a catalyst.